Okay, so what this is John D. Rooke, the Satanist clerk, masquerading as chief judge in Alberta. So let's get going. What we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about pigs. We're going to talk about basic principles of law. We're going to talk about Satanism and order followers. We're going to talk about clerks masquerading as judges and how they're Satanists and they're also psychopaths and how they have no authority. They're not operating in their official capacity, but are in their private capacity, and how they represent you without authority, and how it's never over until you say it's over. So let's get going. PIG is an acronym, stands for Persons in Government Who Intend to Breach the Trust and Perjure their Oath. All law in Canada, and this is a foundational thing, okay? All law in Canada and the USA comes from England, okay? And that's like about 100 different countries around the world. It all comes from England. And the only difference between Canada and the United States of America is the statutes. The Constitution for the United States of America is a trust indenture that defines the government's authority and affirms the common law of England. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution for the United States of America are affirming certain common law rights. That's exactly what they do. There's court cases that talk about it. And so those same common law rights apply in Canada. Okay, and there's more. There's the Article 10 basically says that anything that's not covered here is rights that are protected by the states, okay, or the people, that are reserved to the people. And so there's other rights besides what are defined. Matter of fact, there's court cases that say that our rights are not defined by a statute. The British North America Act, which is the so-called Constitution for Canada, just sets up the government. It does the same thing for Canada that the U.S. Constitution does for the U.S. There's a guy by the name of Mark Passio that talks about Satanists, and he's a former Satanist priest. He's got some great natural law videos. The guy's brilliant. Talks about the pillars of Satanism, talks about moral relativism, where there's no absolute right or wrong. Truth is relative. We just make up what is right or wrong, and what is right or wrong is what we decide today, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And 2/3 of the people believe in moral relativism, and so that's 2/3 of people in America, whether it's Canada or the U.S., it doesn't matter, are Satanists, are practicing Satanists. That's right. And I think it's more. Pillars of Satanism are forms of mind control. Survival is the highest law of Satanism. Social Darwinism. Certain classes of society think they're most fit to rule. Postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless. Ultimate responsibility is self-preservation. And eugenics and the elite get to determine who lives or dies. It's all about social Darwinism. That's all pillars of Satanism. Other pillars of Satanism or forms of mind control is order followers, okay? They're responsible for all the atrocities in history. You think about some of the stuff that's gone on, and that's exactly who's responsible to these order followers. They just follow orders without thinking about whether it's a lawful order or not. They're willing slaves, and they're psychopaths, okay? They don't care about other people. That's what a psychopath is, somebody that doesn't have normal human feelings for other people. And this is Mark's YouTube channel. I highly recommend you go there and watch some of his natural law videos. He's got some great videos up there. He's very articulate. He's a brilliant guy. Anyways, so order followers, anybody who's wearing a military uniform is an agent of the Vatican. This is Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933 that Hitler signed with the Vatican, by the way. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of layfolk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of military uniform. Well, think about it, people. That means that clerical dress or religious habit is a military uniform, and that means that all military uniforms is basically the Vatican. At common law, a sheriff would have a star only. At common law, there's no uniform, okay? The black robe that these bail priests wear in a courtroom is a military uniform. That's exactly what it is. World War II war crimes tribunals, all the Nazis claimed they were just following orders. Gee, that sounds like an order follower. They either suffered death by hanging or spent the rest of their life in jail, and some of them are still hunted to this day. Vietnam War, My Lai massacre, they were convicted of murder. Today, order followers are everywhere. Things you see today using the satanic philosophy of moral relativism are false flag operations. The end justifies the means. Agent provocateurs. The end justifies the means. Entrapment. And entrapment is only when they get proof of it and it comes out in court. I mean, there's a lot of times it probably happens and they don't have proof or don't know that it went on. And that's another example of the end justifies the means. All court cases are kangaroo court unless it's a common law court, and that's Satanism. The judge is a clerk. He's playing stupid. He's working for the prosecutor. If you don't know the law or fail to do something properly or follow the right procedure, they sell you into slavery. They have no authority. They use unconstitutional commercial codes. It's an accepted rule not only in state courts but at the federal courts as well that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a ministerial clerk for the agency. Well, so what's ministerial law? Ministerial law is involving a statute. That's what administrative law is, anything involving a statute. And the next site talks about it. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature or otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency, okay? So statutes are all administrative, okay? There has to be a contract. How did you get to be subject to that statute? Okay, this is talking about JD Rooke, the bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of a municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially but merely ministerially, but merely as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency. In other words, they're bought and paid for. And only in a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. They're bought and paid for, okay? These are basic fundamental principles. A statute in Canada is the same as a statute in the U.S. They're all administrative. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature, and their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities, okay? So, in other words, they don't have any authority, people, and if they try and issue an order or a warrant or something like that, it's a nullity. It doesn't exist. And JD Rooke is a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. A clerk masquerading as a judge is not competent to do justice. They themselves call it the appearance of justice. There's all sorts of court cases that talk about it, Canada and the U.S., hundreds of them. And that's a fraud. A clerk masquerading as a judge is not neutral or unbiased, but is bought and paid for. It's a fundamental right of a party to have a neutral and detached judge preside over judicial proceedings. Well, there are no judicial proceedings in America, people. That's right. In Canada, I don't care where you're at, there's no judicial proceedings. They are bought and paid for, every last one of them. Judicial whores are selling their justice in violation of the Magna Carta, which is actually just us. Okay, that's the proper spelling because it has nothing to do with justice. It has everything to do with just us. We're going to shove this commercial transaction down your throat. That's exactly what they're going to do. To no one will we sell, to no one will we refuse or delay right or justice. And that's Chapter 40 in the Magna Carta. Judicial whores refuse justice if you don't pay their extortion. Judicial whores refuse and delay their justice so they can collect more royalties. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the royalties. These Satanists collect royalties. And all of this is based on presumption, okay? They presume all sorts of things, and they cannot presume anything without representing you, okay? Revolutions have been fought over taxation without representation. The U.S. War of Independence, the English Civil War with Oliver Cromwell, the Magna Carta. There's all sorts of evidence that this has gone on, and lots of other ones, I'm sure, if we did a little bit of research. And this is a Canadian case. Revolutions have been fought over taxation without representation. And this is a U.S. case. Longborough versus Blake, the U.S. Supreme Court. If it were true that according to the spirit of our Constitution, the power of taxation must be limited by the right of representation, whence is derived the right to lay and collect duties, impose excises within this district. If the principles of liberty and our Constitution forbid the raising of revenue from those who are not represented, do not these principles forbid the raising of by duties, impose excises, as well as by direct tax? Okay, so doesn't matter what kind of tax, okay? They have to represent you to get the tax, okay? It's taxation without representation, okay? And it's all done by presumption, okay? The fundamental constitutional principle that there shall be no taxation without representation, the principle of no taxation without representation is central to our conception of democracy and the rule of law. And that's a Canadian court case. This principle of no taxation without representation is basically, it says it twice. But that's King Investments versus New Brunswick. Okay, that's the Supreme Court of Canada. And so what they do, these Satanists, is they forcibly represent you whether you like it or not. That's how these CRA thieves justify their thefts. That's how the IRS thieves justify their thefts. That's how these customs thieves justify their thefts, assaults, kidnappings, and false imprisonments, the border pigs, and then they drag you into their kangaroo court. It's exactly what goes on. The Canada border pigs, the CRA pigs, the IRS pigs make a legal determination for you. Think about it, people. They cannot make a legal determination for you without representing you. They're sitting there saying, oh, he's a person that's defined by our statute. Okay, I guarantee you their statute doesn't say anybody. Okay, it says all persons. Okay, all of their statutes say all persons. And it really doesn't matter what their statute says if you think about it, because it's a statute. It's administrative by definition. So any way you want to look at it, they're representing you. You're saying, here's a person defined by our statute. Here's a taxpayer. Let's steal some of his money. Let's assault him and get away with it. All presumptions are made by representing you. It's impossible for anyone to make a legal determination for you without representing you. That's exactly what's going on. Think about it, people. Any bureaucrat who makes a legal determination for you and thereby represents you, especially after you've fired them, has breached the trust and perjured their oath. That's exactly what's going on. And I have documented proof that I served on them literally hundreds of documents designed to defeat their presumptions. And then after they represent you, your only alternative is to get a judicial whore like Rooke to give you some of their just us. Rooke intends that these Canada border pigs assault people, kidnap people, torture people, falsely imprison people because it is so good for business. Yeah, he gets to collect all sorts of royalties. The causes and necessities for taking up arms. This is nothing new, people. This has been going on for centuries. It's probably been going on from the beginning of time, but at least for centuries, because here it is in 1775 in the causes and necessities for taking up arms. It says, statutes have been passed extending the courts of Admiralty and Vice Admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the custom and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property. Gee, that sounds like a statute. Matter of fact, it says statutes. To supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of law martial. That's martial law, people. That's what they're doing, is they're presuming. And from altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Despotism, people, that's military dictatorship, people. He is combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Well, that's color of law. That's martial law, people. For imposing on us taxes without our consent. This is all taken from the Declaration of Independence. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. That's all presumption. That's martial law. And that's in the Declaration of Independence. And this is George III, Chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, 2 years, and he passes this act in the tyrant in England, the pig. Whereas Taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain and for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no joke, Batman, that from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment, whatever, payable in any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as it may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. What a Satanist, and in my other video, it's called the United States is owned by the Crown, and there's another one about how the Crown is owned by the Vatican, and in there it talks about how in the Treaty of 1783, okay, that was signed by the U.S. and King George. It says right in the preamble to the treaty, it says King George is the Prince Elector and Arch Treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire and of the United States of America. And if you think about that, and he was the King of France too, King of England and France. So France helped finance the War of Independence. So essentially what that treaty is saying is King George financed both sides of the War of Independence, but he didn't do it with his own money. He did it with the Vatican's money because he signed it as the Prince Elector and Arch Treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire. So this is all the Vatican. Okay, this is all coming from the Vatican, and that's exactly what's going on here, people. And JD Rooke is a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after he witnessed a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Okay, so what's that got to do with all of this? Well, think about it. They flogged this guy to death because he didn't want to take a license. Well, they represented him. They said, "You're supposed to take a license," and so then they basically assaulted him and killed him because he didn't want to get into a contract with them. So then we'll just kill you. And this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary 1843 edition, and it says license is a contract. It's a right given by some competent authority to do an act without which such authority would be illegal. Well, at common law, what they do is they convert a right into a privilege. They send out their low intelligence thugs, their code enforcers, to assault you and drag you into their so-called contract. That's why all this is so satanic. These people are just the lowest form of life there is. This is diabolically evil, and we need to put a stop to it, or we're going to get the judgments of God here pretty soon. I'll tell you, it's coming. A license is express or implied. An express license is one which direct terms authorizes the performance of a certain act, and a license to keep a tavern by a public authority. An implies license is one, though not expressly given, may be presumed by the acts of the party having the right to give it. In other words, filing fees are an implied license, okay, because then they let you go into their kangaroo court. It's exactly what goes on. License tax cases. This is U.S. Supreme Court. The requirement of payment of such licenses is only a mode of imposing taxes. Okay, so that's all of it's always all about is taxes, revenue. They want to extort some money. Okay, that's why these border pigs want to get some money when you go across the border, because they're not going to let you go. Okay, they're going to assault you, kidnap you, and falsely imprison you. Okay, and so then you pay the extortion, and then that's your license to continue on. So they're converting a right into a privilege. That's exactly what's going on. And a license is only a mode of enforcing the payment of such taxes. The recognition by the acts of Congress of the power and the right to states to tax, control, and regulate any business, and that's where they have authority is over businesses. But these border pigs go ahead and assault you, anybody they want, and they don't care if you're a business or not, and they drag you into their kangaroo court, and then Rooke, their Satanist whores, go ahead and railroad you. Make sure you get railroaded. The proof of service, JD Rooke, the bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. The proof of service shows that Rooke and his subordinates and his successors received. I sent him a notice and demand on the 15th of September 2010. I sent him another one on the 9th of December 2010. I sent another one on 8th of November 2010, and all of them are found in the first video, Rooke, the Canadian Judicial Whore #1. And so he was noticed. Okay, and I've sent out hundreds of those things. They were all noticed, and I have proof. Okay, registered mail, that's pretty good proof. And Rooke, the whore judge, knows that the so-called judges in the Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta are his subordinates, and he knows that he conspired with the post office clerks to destroy evidence of service of my documents, which is, by the way, mail fraud. Matter of fact, I'm working on a way to file a complaint with the Universal Postal Union about that, because I think I can get his butt in hot water. Rooke knows that he represented me without authority after I fired him. That's exactly what went on, okay? And we're going to have proof of it here pretty quick. When he accused me of being a paper terrorist. Yeah, me, a paper terrorist. and in his case, Meads versus Meads, okay, and that's the site's there, 2012 ABQB 571, which is usually actually slander and defamation. Rooke used a divorce case as an opportunity to smear anybody who thinks they're free with his OPCA acronym, which stands for Organized Pseudo-Legal Commercial Argument. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And so he uses all these big words that people don't have any clue what they mean. We're going to talk about that in a minute. In personam, in rem, this is taken from RAPGA, a Dictionary of American and English Law, 1883. In persona, in rem, a judgment or decree is said to be in rem when it binds third persons, such as the sentence of a court of admiralty on a question of prize or a decree of nullity or a dissolution of marriage. Okay, so the point being is a court of admiralty deals with divorces. Okay, that's an admiralty court. Okay, and that's the point I want to make here. Brown lays down the rule in these terms: that general rule, however, at present is that Admiralty acts only in rem, and that no person can be subject to that jurisdiction but by his consent, expressed by his entering into a stipulation. Okay, that's a contract. That's U.S. Supreme Court. In Krebel's report, it's expressly said that without a stipulation, the Admiralty has no jurisdiction at all over the person. Okay, again, it's a contract. It's got to have a contract. And so they assault you with one of their satanic contracts. This is U.S. Supreme Court again. It's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to a license. All jurisdictional facts supporting the claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court. U.S. Supreme Court. A Divorce Act is a federal statute in Canada. Therefore, Rooke was operating as a clerk. He's not operating in a judicial capacity, as already described herein. He was a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. The divorce court is an admiralty court, which is an ecclesiastical court, and the real party of interest is the Vatican. See my All Courts Are Ecclesiastical video. Okay, so he was working for the Vatican. Okay, he's always working for the Vatican. Rooke was not representing the government, but was operating in his private capacity. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. No state legislator, executive, or judicial officer can war against the Constitution without violating his undertaking to support it. The constitutional theory is that we, the people, are the sovereigns. The state and federal officials are only our agents. And so Rooke was a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. He issued a void judgment in Meads versus Meads as an opportunity to smear anybody who thinks they are free with his OPCA, organized pseudo-legal commercial argument litigants. And it's a divorce case under the Divorce Act. Under a statute, Rooke is operating as a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. By calling my arguments pseudo-legal arguments, Rooke is not saying they're not valid arguments. Think about it. They're saying that he doesn't like the arguments. They're pseudo-legal arguments, okay? They're kind of like not legal or wannabe legal arguments, okay? And Rooke is saying he does not want a lawful argument, okay? He's calling them a pseudo-legal argument and a wannabe legal argument, okay? Think about it. And so Rooke is saying that he wants me to debate contract. That's what he wants you to do. He wants you to go into their jurisdiction. And really, if you think about it, he can't respond to the arguments that I'm bringing up, because if he does, he's admitting his own treason. Okay? He cannot say, yes, you're right, because he would be admitting treason, and he cannot say, you're wrong, because I'm not wrong. Okay, that's the point, okay? He cannot say you're right, because that would be admitting treason, and he cannot say I'm wrong, because I'm not wrong. And so he comes up with this acronym, this pseudo-legal argument thing, and basically prohibits anybody from filing into his kangaroo court unless they comply with certain requirements to defeat this pseudo-legal argument stuff. And then he goes and sets up the scenario where these border pigs assault people like me and do all this other stuff. See here, this is the Divorce Act, okay? It's a Canada statute, okay? It's a statute. He's dealing as a clerk. The Judges Act. I don't care if it's a Divorce Act, it's the Judges Act. He's still dealing as a clerk. He's a clerk masquerading as a judge. The Court of Queen's Bench Act, okay? He's a clerk masquerading as a judge. The Judicature Act, okay? Same reason. All these acts he's operating under all sorts of acts at the same time. And it doesn't matter what he does. He's a clerk masquerading as a judge. He's bought and paid for. This is his order. And see here, it's filed on June 18, 2013, which was about 4 or 5 months before they assaulted me at the border. This master order for organized pseudo-legal commercial argument documents, okay? And get a load of this. This is really good. This is going to sink that guy. I'm hoping that maybe we'll get to see him do that little dance they do at the end of a common law rope at some point. But I guess we'll see. Anyways, it's the Honorable Associate Chief Justice JD Rooke. Yeah, he's honorable. Yeah, I'll bet he is. It's interesting that he's the one that puts it on there. Anyways, and it says, upon the court's own motion. Okay, at the very bottom there, upon the court's own motion. In other words, he just took it upon himself under this Divorce Act, pursuant to Meads versus Meads, under this divorce case, to go and assault anybody that goes into his kangaroo court. And that's exactly what he did. And this is actually text from this Meads versus Meads decision where he's talking about me. And it says, the sovereign man, sovereign citizen movement is the chief U.S. OPCA community. Several reported Ontario decisions document court interactions with well-identified sovereign men. This court has had limited exposure to sovereign men, most notably being a lawsuit. Yeah, I filed a lawsuit against him. That's true. And which it says leave to appeal denied. That's not true. Okay, what happened was I appealed it to the Court of Appeals, and the whore in the Court of Appeals wanted the extortion. That's what happened. I didn't need to ask for permission to file the appeal. Okay, and so it was stopped because I didn't have the extortion to pay the filing fee, the $600 filing fee, and oh, by the way, they learned their lesson. I filed a criminal complaint against them, and I recently filed an appeal, and when the clerk demanded the extortion, they said, okay, get the whore down here, and we can debate about its extortion. And the clerks went away and said, well, let me look into it. And the clerk goes away and starts and comes back in a few minutes and says, well, I'm still looking into it. And I said, that's fine. And then goes away and comes back in a few minutes, and the clerk says, no problem, I'm just going to go ahead and file this thing. Anyways, so the bottom line is that JCB McDonald, who's the whore in the Alberta Court of Appeals, insisted on selling his so-called justice, and that means he's a whore. That's exactly what he means. He's selling his just us. And anyways, don't get me going. Okay, and then as far as Rooke calling me a paper terrorist, actually I find it quite flattering. But realistically, it's not true, because if I was able to terrorize a bureaucrat into doing some contrary to his oath of office, the bureaucrat would be guilty of breach of trust. And the simple fact of the matter is that if the bureaucrat changes behavior because of something I've done, it's because I've shown him that he's been given unlawful commands, and he realizes he has no duty to obey an unlawful command. Okay, but Rooke doesn't care about that. He wants to assault people. He wants to generate business for his so-called court, and he wants to deny due process. That's exactly what all of this is designed to do, is deny due process. And because I should be able to make any argument I want, even to the moon, and it shouldn't matter. It's none of his damn business. You know, to be quite frank, it's none of his damn business. And So, he's a Satanist. Okay, that's exactly what it is. He intends to deny due process, and we're going to show about that here right now. Rooke intends to represent me without authority. He intends to breach the trust. He intends to make sure that his hired pig thugs keep their presumptions so they can have plausible deniability when they assault people, kidnap people, falsely imprison people, and all of which is in support of his military dictatorship under their satanic Roman law. That's exactly what's going on, people. Rooke intends to deny due process. Rooke is named in his petition of right, which was filed in the Court of Queen's Bench in Alberta on the 4th of November 2010. And Rooke is named in criminal complaints, which are recorded in the Pinal County Recorder at fee number 2011-066-323 and 066-322. And Rooke took the initiative on his own to do his master order for organized pseudo-legal commercial argument documents. and he proved that everything I said in the affidavit of criminal complaint, the Criminal Corporation of Canada, which is recorded in the Pinal County Recorder at 2011-066-322, is absolutely true. Yeah, he went and made all that stuff true. That's exactly, if you think about it, that's exactly what he did. I accused him of all sorts of things, and when he did that, he just made all that stuff true. That's exactly what he did. Rooke, the chief clerk, masquerading as a judge, has made everything I said in the numerous paragraphs of the affidavit of criminal complaint, Lethbridge City Pigs, which is recorded with the Pinal County Recorder number 2011 at 066-323, is now 100% true. So both of those affidavits are 100% true now, and Rooke made it that way. Rooke issued his void judgment so that his Canada border pigs could assault me, kidnap me, torture me, falsely imprison me, and drag me into their kangaroo court, hold a show trial under their fictitious color of law statutes, and then falsely imprison me further. And this is the Criminal Code of Canada, okay? So it's a statute. And this is the Customs Act. It's a statute. This is the Canada Border Services Agency Act. That's the border pigs, how they operate. That's a statute. And then Rooke's Mormon Satanist buddy, Tilleman, in conspiracy with Benkendorf and Bernard, he did deny my petition for a writ of prohibition. At common law, subject matter is not within the jurisdiction. The court may dismiss on its own proceedings, and a remedy may be had by a writ of prohibition. So a writ of prohibition was what I petitioned for, and that's when I went before Tilleman, the Mormon Satanist, and he wanted to make sure I get to go to their hotel, and so Tilleman, I mean, he's an accomplice. Okay, that's exactly. Tilleman wanted to volunteer to be an accomplice. Okay, so Tilleman, and he's a Mormon too, so that means he's a Satanist. And not that all Mormons are Satanists, but Tilleman's clearly a Satanist because he's shoving one of his contracts down my throat. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary the license, and all jurisdictional facts supporting the claim supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court. And I told Redman, the satanic clerk masquerading as a judge in the provincial court, that he did not have jurisdiction. When I went in there, I fired him, and the clerk, I fired Redman and walked out, and it was all over the news. I'll tell you, I went to see my friends a couple days later, and they told me about it being all over the news. This is the Provincial Court Act. Okay, it's another statute. Redman, the bought and paid for clerk, masquerading as a judge. The provincial court is an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. All you got to do is read in their act, and it talks about it. Okay, if it's got limited jurisdiction, then it's by definition an inferior court. Bill Tilleman, the bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge. Tilleman, under Rooke's instructions, denied my petition for a writ of habeas corpus. The judgment of conviction pronounced by a court without jurisdiction and one imprisoned thereunder may obtain release by habeas corpus. Okay, and so habeas corpus was perfectly appropriate for that situation. But Tilleman, he wanted to participate in the assault. Okay, he's probably getting a royalty. I'm sure he is. These are void judgments from England. These are talking about void judgments because these Canadian Satanists don't like to have some Canadian cases, and there's not hardly any. And so these are England. They'll take those. Void order results from a fundamental defect in proceedings or from a without jurisdiction ultra-vires act of a public body or a judicial office holder. Okay, so I mean that's exactly what's going on. A without jurisdiction ultra-vires act is any act which a court did not have power to do. It wasn't a court. It wasn't a court. It was a Satanist pale priest, Clerk, masquerading as a judge. Similarly, if the higher court's order is founded on the lower court's void act or invalid claim, then the higher court's decision will also be void. A void order or claim has no legal effect ab initio, which means from the beginning or outset, and therefore does not need to be appealed, although for convenience it may sometimes be necessary to have it set aside. Therefore, a void order or claim does not have to be obeyed, can be ignored, and its nullity can be relied on as a defense when necessary. A void order can be set aside by the court which made the order because the court has inherent jurisdiction to set aside its own void order, whereas a voidable order can be set aside by an appeal. So it was a void. It's an absolute nullity. A person affected by both a void and voidable order has a right to have the order set aside, which means the court does not have discretion to refuse to set aside the order. Well, at least, I'm not interested in throwing myself at the mercy of these whores anymore. And so, I'm not, I've turned it over to God. I'll let God speak. And to go on there, I consider it a bit of a badge of honor, quite frankly, these Satanists, and I am never, this is not over, okay? This is not over, these Satanists. I am not done with them. Okay, and the procedure for setting aside a void order is by application to the court, which made the void order, although it can be set aside by appeal, although an appeal is not necessary, or it can be quashed or declared invalid by judicial review, and where damages may also be claimed. Yeah, well, these Satanists, I don't care how much damages I forgot anything. We'll be talking about this on Judgment Day. And although an appeal is not necessary to set aside a void order, if permission to appeal is requested, and if out of time, the court should grant permission, because time does not run because the order is void and the person affected by it has a right to have it set aside. In other words, it doesn't matter about time limit. So I can appeal it anytime I want. A void order is incurably void. All proceedings based on the invalid claim or void act are also void. Even a decision of the higher courts will be void if the decision is founded on an invalid claim or void act, because something cannot be founded on nothing. It is never too late to raise the issue of nullity, and a person can ignore the void order or claim and raise it as a defense when necessary. And where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing, such has been the law from the days of Marshal Say, and that's found in Coke. Okay, that's like the 1500s, and that's cited in the U.S. Supreme Court, and then that's cited again by a federal court case. A void judgment is one which from its inception is a complete nullity without legal effect. Void judgment is one which has no legal force or effect whatever. It's an absolute nullity. Its invalidity may be asserted by any person whose rights are affected at any time and in any place. It need not be attacked directly, but may be attacked collaterally whenever and wherever it's interposed. A void judgment, insofar as it purports to be a pronouncement of a court, is an absolute nullity. A void order may be attacked either directly or collaterally at any time. A void judgment is one which from its inception is and forever continues to be absolutely null without legal efficacy, ineffectual to bind the parties or to support a right, of no legal force and effect whatever, and incapable of enforcement in any matter to any degree. Not every action by any judge is an exercise of his judicial function. Is not a judicial function for a judge to commit an intentional tort, even though the tort occurs in the courthouse. When a judge acts as a trespasser of the law, when a judge does not follow the law, the judge loses subject matter jurisdiction, and the judge's orders are void and of no legal force or effect. And that's exactly what they did. Okay, they did not follow the law, so they lose jurisdiction, and they didn't have it in the first place. Except as provided by section, and this is actually Texas Civil Practice and Remedy Code, and they have similar things in all states and in Canada, and except as provided, an officer is not liable for damages resulting from execution of a writ issued by a court of the state if the officer in good faith executes or attempts to execute the writ. And so what the point being is that if the cop can go ahead and execute the warrant, and there's nothing you can do to the cop because he didn't know it was void. Okay, like they're brain dead idiots. I've had cops actually tell me, like in Texas, what they do, it's called a capias. Okay, it's not a warrant, it's a capias. As a matter of fact, there's court cases to say that a capias is not a warrant, and but that's what they issue is a capias, and so unless you tell the cop that it's not a valid warrant, it's not a warrant, it's a capias, then they're going to go ahead and assault you, and they'll be immune. So you got to tell them that, and then you can bring that up in the lawsuit. And so everything they do is a fraud. Revoke all signatures. That's the number one thing you should do, is revoke all signatures. And so as soon as you get out of their jail, or as soon as you get somewhere where you can put together a revocation, file a revocation into that case. You got the case number, and file a revocation, revoke all signatures. There's a friend of mine in Utah that did that in a federal case after they had him in jail for a year, okay, and transporting them all over the country because they refused to sign anything. And so then what they did is as soon as they got out, they revoked all signatures, and that judge got fired. Okay, that's a federal judge in this case, so got fired, and there's another judge, and everything's changed. Okay, and the point being is that what they do is they forge your signature onto documents, and you don't even know that's what's happening. That's how they get you into their jail. Okay, it's they got to have a contract. Okay, that's how they get you into their jail, and so then they forge your signature onto a contract, and when you revoke all your signatures, then that exposes all of that, and then the manure hits the fan. Let me put it that way. Anyway, so revoke all signatures, file a notice of void judgment into the case. And so Rooke isn't satisfied assaulting me, kidnapping me, torturing me, holding a show trial, and falsely imprisoning me because now his Vatican Jesuit satanic bar member buddies are busy trumpeting their lies on my private YouTube channel. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. Look at this. This is Seth Lewis, okay? JD Rooke is an awesome judge, and you're a fucking schizophrenic and dry rot in your frontal lobe, okay? So these are Satanist bar members. They don't have anything intelligent to say. They just throw stuff out there like a bar member does, you know? What's the truth got to do with anything? And then, hey, everybody, these are communist bar members from the communist country to the north of us trying to get brownie points from their handler. That's what my response was. And it says, you can't seem to decide if I'm a Satanist, a lawyer, a papist, communist. You really should narrow it. I mean, this is what they're doing. Okay, there's a whole bunch of statements here I went and copied into here because this is all coming from Rooke. Okay, that's where it's coming from. This is related to his video, but not all of them are related to this video. But these are bar members and Satanists, and what does being this fucking nuts feel like? Okay, so these people are just Satanists. They're just liars. They just make up all sorts of lies, and so here's some more stuff. You really need to go back on your meds, okay? Yeah, well, like I do meds, okay? I don't do meds, Satanist, okay? You and your Baal priest do meds. This is all great material for my next video, Satanist. That's what I put down there. And then it says, because if there's one thing the world's need is another gish gallop of brain-frothering. See, I mean, he's going and spouting off on a bunch of gobbledygook. And look at this. And he doesn't have anything substantial to say. There's people on my YouTube channel that make intelligent arguments about what happens, and I come back and tell them they're full of it and why, but I don't delete their comments because they made an intelligent comment. And but these guys are not interested in anything intelligent. They are Rooke's Satanist bar member buddies, and intelligence and knowledge and truth has nothing to do with anything they do. And so anyways, to keep going, you sound like a lying, thieving, murdering Vatican bar member Satanist. I can delete your comments if you like. And this is a violation of my sovereign right as a living flesh child of Baal, the undefeated. So they're admitting they're Satanists. This is great material for my next video, Satanist, because if there's one thing the world needs, yet another, and this is where he went and spouted off again. I shake the dust of the earth off my feet, and we'll be talking about you about this on Judgment Day. And then he goes on, he says, Yahweh, the sheep god, the nailed lamb, he has no power here, yeah? Well, we'll see, Satanist. Coming from the Vatican, Jesuit, lying, thieving, bar member, Satanist, I consider that a compliment. Go ahead, send me some more stuff for the next video, Satanist. You know this tendency you have to just jam in a whole bunch of adjectives that you decided everybody who doesn't kowtow to your blather just further shows what a nut job you are. Okay, so the point is that he doesn't say anything substantial, and they're just throwing insults out there. I mean, that's bar members, okay? These are bar members. They're Satanists. It says, haha, just us, learn to spell, dickhead. Okay, well, he's not intelligent enough to know that it's just us. It has nothing to do with just us. And that's what I tell him there in the next thing. Your kangaroo court is nothing but a gang of thieves completing a commercial transaction. That's why it's just us. And my kangaroo court, me a Satanist, how well, perhaps, and then so he comes up with, the sooner you get locked up with your cellmate Bubba. Okay, so he's coming back with all sorts of nonsense comments again that mean nothing. Okay, and that's typical lawyer stuff. See here, Duncan saying Mr. Rooke is awesome. Okay, so yeah. So they're Rook's buddies, and they're saying I need to go back on my meds. Well, I don't do meds. I've never done meds, and I'm not about to start. That's all Satanism. That's sorcery. Anyways, so they just throw out insults. Says you're drawn on for hours. You need any further. Well, it doesn't. Receiving reams of insults to your person, even slightly prompt. You think that maybe you're. So they're saying because they're insulting me that I should reconsider my position. Sorry. Their judgment day is coming. And then they're talking about the right to travel. Okay, and this is on a right to travel video he's making comments about, and again, they're not saying anything of substance. They're just throwing out garbage is what they're throwing out. And then he's talking about land patents. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not interested in watching the video. They're just throwing garbage out there. And so these people were, and what I did is I deleted a lot of these comments. And what I've done now is I've restricted, because Rooke has gone and sent his Satanist bar member, Satanist buddies to stir up all sorts of stuff in my YouTube channel. I've had to change all my videos to, I used to just allow any kind of comments. That's my private channel. And so I can delete comments. I mean, and so I've limited them. They all have to be approved now, and I'll just delete their stuff. I was going ahead and deleting it anyways, but now, I'll just, it won't even get out there. It says here, Wesley Snipes and others said they didn't have to pay taxes either, and they will cite you and tow your car away without your consent if you don't follow. See, again, these are Satanists. Even a birth certificate, every human being is held to follow the law. See, these are all Satanists. Okay, and that's what they're saying here is we're bar members, we're Satanists. Blah blah blah. And so they're basically just saying stuff that's not even intelligent, not an intelligent response, so. Afraid of the truth, and then so stop volunteering and see what happens. Okay, keep paying, slave. I mean, we need somebody to pay the fictitious so-called debt, and it says here, are you gonna? He went and threatened to murder me. Quite frankly, you're gonna murder me? Make my day. Name the time and place, Satanist. Pretty soon you're gonna off yourself. No, I think he's gonna try and murder me, and so. Increase your lithium dose, okay? So then they're peddling their potions. I don't argue with idiots because they drag you down to their level with experience. So all oaths must be lawful, allowed by common law or some statute that they're administered by purpose in their private capacity or not duly authorized. They are quorum non-judice. Okay, and the point being is that when the judge is a clerk, he's operating in his private capacity, and and everything he does is a nullity. And that's taken from Dr. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Rooke intends to make war on anyone who considers them a living soul or a freeman on the land. It's tyrants like Rooke that precipitated the War of Independence when they flogged a man to death for refusing to take a license, which, after having witnessed it, Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." It's tyrants like Rooke that precipitated the Magna Carta. It's tyrants like Rooke that precipitated the Confirmio Chartarum. Freeman, this is actually taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, a person who possesses and enjoys all civil and political rights belonging to the people under a free government, a person who's not a slave, okay? And so they're basically insulting anybody who thinks they're free. That's exactly what they're doing, a freeman on the land, okay? Can't have that. It's in his own void judgment. A person, another cite on freeman, which is Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. In Roman law, it denoted one who was either born free or emancipated and was the opposite of a slave. In feudal law, it designated an allodial proprietor. So anyways, that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. It's tyrants that, like Rooke, that precipitated the English Civil War. It's tyrants like Rooke and Tilleman who keep saying that the Magna Carta no longer applies. Right? See, this is the kind of stuff that come out because they intend to precipitate another revolution. Rooke and Tilleman have no lawful valid current oath. Rooke and Tilleman are bought and paid for. Rooke and Tilleman are Satanists, order takers, and pigs. Redman intended to deny me my common law rights, including my right to due process and his kangaroo court in his summary proceeding, which is also intended by Harper the pig, McKay the pig, Johnson the pig, Battenberg the pig, Redford the pig, Bernard the pig, Brinkendorf the pig, Dennis the pig, Ethel the pig, Rooke the pig, Matchett the pig, Lagrange the pig, Hironaka the pig, Whitman the pig, Tilleman the pig, Nicholson the pig, McCurdy the pig, Lefevre the pig, Langston the pig, Whisker the pig, Toes the pig, McCurdy the pig, and the CBSA pigs. This is Rooke the pig. Okay, this is what he looks like. That's his picture in his uniform, in his military uniform. And that's Ethel the pig. That's him in his military uniform. And that's Redford the pig. And that's Nicholson the pig. And that's Harper the pig. And that's Toes the pig. And that's McKay the pig. And that's Johnston the pig in his military uniform. Kangaroo court is a self-appointed tribunal or mock court in which the principles of law and justice are disregarded, perverted, and parodied. A court or tribunal characterized by unauthorized or irregular procedures so as to render a fair proceeding impossible, a sham legal proceedings. A summary proceeding is any proceeding by which a controversy is settled, case disposed of, or trial conducted in a prompt and simple manner without the aid of a jury, without presentment or indictment, or in other aspects out of the regular course of the common law. Okay, in other words, it's not the common law; it's a kangaroo court, and that's what Redman put on. Kangaroo court is a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which the person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion while he was a bought and paid for clerk, right? Because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. A summary proceeding is a non-jury proceeding that settles a controversy or disposes of a case in a prompt and simple manner. Summary proceedings were directed by Act of Parliament. There's no jury, and such a person was acquitted or sentenced only by such person as statute had appointed for his judge. Okay, so again, that's where it comes down to is the statute. So he's a clerk. It's not a judge. He's a clerk. The common law is wholly a stranger to summary proceedings. Okay, so there's no common law there. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. A plenary jurisdiction is a military dictatorship. Okay, plenary jurisdiction. The court's full and absolute power to subject matter. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Summary proceedings, another name for Star Chamber, which was abolished by England. The corrupt Star Changer courts of England required defendants to have counsel. Star Changer stood for swiftness and arbitrary power, and it was a limitation on the common law. In other words, there was no common law there. When acting, Redman the pig was not a judicial whore because he was not acting as a judge, was acting to enforce a statute. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, not in judicial capacity. Courts administrating and enforcing statutes do not act judicially. Okay, so administrative law has to do with statutes. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature, and their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Tilleman, the Mormon Satanist, and his handler Rooke, the Satanist, both became clerks to aid and abet Redman to enforce his Roman civil statutes. Judges who become involved in the enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, act as mere clerks for the involved agency. All of this was instructions from real Elizabeth the bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended, because if a dog is your enemy, he doesn't make you think he's your friend while he sticks a knife in your back. And think about it. If, like I said earlier, in the Treaty of 1783, it's called the Definitive Treaty of 1783, King George signed as the Prince Elector and Arch Treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire, and Queen Elizabeth is his successor. Okay, so she is the same thing, Arch Treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire, and Canada is bankrupt, and so she's taking care of the bankruptcy. Arch Treasurer. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what's going on, people. And so it is Elizabeth the bitch. And there's Elizabeth the bitch. And she's the ringleader of the criminal enterprise called Canada. And judge ceases to set as judicial officer because the governing principles of administrative law provides that courts are prohibited from substituting their evidence, testimony, record, arguments, and rationale for that of the agency. Additionally, courts are prohibited from substituting their judgments for that of the agency. And it is the accepted rule not only in state courts but in federal courts as well. When a judge is enforcing administrative law, they are described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a clerk, a bought and paid for clerk. That's exactly what's going on. Judge loses his absolute immunity from damage actions only when he acts in clear absence of all jurisdiction or performance of an act which is not judicial in nature. Okay, so when they step out of that, when they become a clerk for the agency, they just step out of their judicial nature. Okay, when enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially unless they're not protected by qualified or limited immunity. They don't have a shred of immunity. They are personally liable. Okay, officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they're deemed to know the law. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. They weren't representing the government. It was a contract. Okay, they were shoving one of their satanic contracts down their throat. I have served on them one of my revocation of all signatures. Okay, and so that'll get their attention. And then I filed a notice of void judgment, but I'm gonna file another one, and it's gonna be a lot better than the last one. And again, because it's a void judgment. They're Satanists, they're thieves. Whenever any officer of the court commits fraud during a proceeding in the court, he or she is engaged in fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court is fraud which is directed to the judicial machinery itself. It's not fraud between the parties or fraudulent documents, false statements, or perjury. It is where the court or a member is corrupted or influence is attempted, or where a judge has not performed his judicial function. Thus, where the impartial functions of the court have been directly corrupted. Okay, and that's exactly what's going on with these Satanists. Fraud upon the court is defined by the Seventh Court of Appeals to embrace that species of fraud which does or attempts to defile a court itself, or is a fraud perpetrated by officers of the court so that the judicial machinery cannot perform in the usual manner its impartial task of adjudging cases that are presented for adjudication. And so, again, that's fraud upon the court. A decision produced by fraud upon the court is not in essence a decision at all and never becomes final. It's the same thing as a void judgment. Okay. And fraud upon the court vitiates the entire proceeding. Okay, it's a nullity. The maxim that fraud vitiates every transaction into which it enters applies to judgments as well as to contracts and other transactions. The maxim that fraud vitiates every transaction into which it enters. Brutum fulmen. Okay, so Rooke, the Satanist clerk masquerading as a judge, did some brutum fulmen. So did Redman, and so did Tilleman, the Satanist. An empty noise, an empty threat, a judgment void upon its face, which is in legal effect no judgment of all, by which no rights are divested, and from which none can be obtained, neither binds nor bars anyone. Okay, and that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. You are the father, the devil, the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for his liar and the father of it. Okay, these Tilleman And Redman and Rooke are all liars, okay? They're Satanists. That's exactly everything they do is a fraud. It's Satanism. But the fearful and the unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So we're going to be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanists, by which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison. That's 1 Peter 3:19 and Isaiah 24:21-22. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the hosts of the high ones that are on high and the kings of the earth. Gee, that sounds like Rooke and upon the earth, and that sounds like Johnston, and that sounds like Athel, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. John D. Rooke, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Derek Redman, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Stephen Harper, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Donald Athel, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. David Johnston, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Robert Nicholson, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Peter McKay, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Vic Hayes, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Bill Tilleman, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. James Langston, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Stephen Blaney, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Kevin Hewson, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Mackenzie Meehan, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Mark Vandenberg, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Barry Benkendorf, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Jonathan Dennis, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Alex Bernard, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satan. Allison Redford, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satan. Timothy Hiranaka, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. JC McDonald, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. TJ Matchett, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. Neil C. Whitman, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. J.N. LeGrandeur, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. P.A. Robotham, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. P.W.L. Martin, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. B.K. O'Farrell, before God, angels, and these witnesses, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we'll be talking about this on Judgment Day, Satanist. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned of the sword come and take any person from among them, and he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. And that's Ezekiel 33:6. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You are now a watchman. Circulate this video far and wide. Expose these criminals for who they are. Other videos, Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity Series, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 and 2, Unidroit, Martial Laws here, quasi-contracts and Roman civil law, de facto courts, all courts are ecclesiastical laws, DC courts in Texas, jurisdiction. Copies of these documents can be found on my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs. Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. If you find this useful, then you need to pay it forward. And if you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. Contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com, website sovereigntyinternational.fyi, email engineerwin@yahoo, YouTube profile Sovereign Living, Facebook community page called Sovereignty International, also a private group called Sovereignty International. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants, and the Google private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and I hope you got something out of it.